I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 19 years old and ADHD. So the way that I learned to deal with the mania in my brain was to say the thoughts out loud to get them out of my head into the ether. So it was no longer cluttering my mind. So this was self-talk for me, and saying it out loud actually saved my life 20-something years ago when I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, because I didn't know why my mind was moving so fast. But when I actually said each thought out loud and asked myself, is this a helpful thought? Is this helpful or harmful to me? Is this helpful or hurtful to me? I can then ask myself, do I really want to hold on to this thought, or can we just discard of it? So it helped me to really manage my own mind, saying it out loud.
Wow. Oh, so 19, that's like a heavy lick and stamp to place on someone. You know, even that word diagnoses,
I know.
When we look at allopathic care in Western medicine, specifically the DSM-5, which is, by the way, 70% funded by the pharmaceutical companies themselves. It's really fascinating that most people don't know this. We just talked about it with my buddy Alex Wolf, who's putting a product out into the world that's a legal microdose to help calm down the hemispheres in the brain and get people out of this kind of pharmacological loop of insanity. At 19, did that feel real to you? And if so, how have you looked back on that in your journey of evolving to know that, do you need the medicine? Do you not need the medicine? My mom is manic bipolar. And so I understand that journey. And I look back for her and I'm like, wow, I think if her parents were different, and God love them, they didn't know any different, maybe she would have had different software that could be able to change her hardware, because neuroplasticity is real. Going back to 19, can you speak to, or can you be in conversation right now on the podcast with her for anybody that's struggling with bipolar? I've talked about my mom many times on the show, to really connect with her and give her not just a, oh, it's okay, baby, like a passivity, but like a real understanding of what she was going through from the woman that you are now.
Man, I feel so much compassion for the 19-year-old in me. She was a sophomore in college. She was using a lot of drugs. She barely slept. She was missing her classes. She was screwing around with guys literally every other day, just doing things. I wasn't raised that way, okay? I come from a conservative Indian background. I come from an immigrant background, but this is not the way I was raised. I was raised to wait till marriage, right? I was raised in that way. So when I first got diagnosed, I remember being 19 and feeling relief, Josh. I felt relieved because I saw my behavior and I saw the way that I was being, and I'm like, this is not me. So when I got this label and I got this diagnosis, I remember at that time feeling like, oh, so there's nothing wrong with me. There's just something wrong with my brain, right? And so so I delved into all these books on bipolar disorder, my favorite one being The Tao of Bipolar. And it just talks about how if you're diagnosed with bipolar disorder, you have to learn how to manage your energy. So I learned at 19 what it means like, and of course, it's still a work in progress. I'm still learning how to manage my energy. Every day is different. But when I was 19, I was relieved that I was given that label. I was relieved to be put on medication. And I have struggled with being on and off medication my entire life, because there is a part of me that's like, well, fuck this. This is not my fault. If I just had parents who XYZ, if I just had an environment that wasn't so chaotic, my brain wouldn't have formed in this way. So I've always had this very volatile relationship with being on medication. I just felt it was very unfair, and I felt like I can do it without meds. So I was on and off meds for a very long time. I've most recently gone back in the past 3 years. I've been back on medication. It has completely changed my life, because the way that I was off medication, it was not good for my relationships. It was not good for me. I got on a very small dosage. I take Abilify. It's 10 milligrams of Abilify, and it works for me. But there's still to this day where I've had to really lean into my acceptance about like, okay, this is a diagnosis that I've been given, but I don't want to fully accept it. There's still a part of me that's like, listen, I'll take the meds, because I do see that it's working. I do feel a difference. Like, I feel the difference in my own self, but there's still a part of me that resists it to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah, to this day, I'm still fucking pissed off about it, because I'm like, I feel very stable, right? I'm very stable. But then the question is it the medication or is it all the other stuff that you're doing, all the inner work that you're doing? I don't know. But I do know that what I'm doing now is working so far.
And when you say it's working, because I feel like to the degree that we have peace in these 5 sides of self, and you have some really unique teachings in the book that we're going to unpack. One of the teachings that I love, that I've been leaning into for the past 5 years now, has been this pentagon aspect. So we live in a physical body, that's 1. We have a mind, that's 2. We experience emotions. That's 3. We have a connection to God. We prayed before the podcast, which was amazing, right? So I know that you have a connection with something outside yourself. And then lastly, because we're here in this 3D world, we also get to master finances. And so this pentagon, whatever area is lacking or sucking chi from another, then that's the degree in my life I'm suffering or I'm feeling well.
Yeah.
And I wonder for you, I've even thought about this for my mother. I mean, she's in her 70s now. But you're much, much, much younger than her. And so I wonder for you, has there ever been a curiosity that the very work that you're putting out in the world, which is managing oneself to be able to hear the soul, to speak truth into existence, is the very thing that you're still grappling with?
Yes.
It's such a paradox that God gave you. What do you make of that?
I just feel like God would not give me this, whatever you want to call it, diagnosis, label, condition, if I couldn't handle it. There's a reason why I've been given this label, and I have overanalyzed this too many times to count, but I'm just like, why? Like, why? What is this about the bipolarity? And so this is how I've made sense of it, and it helps me sleep at night. I think of bipolarity as the duality within all of us, right? We all have multiple sides to us. We all have many different parts to us. My job in this lifetime, and I've heard God say this to me, is be one with yourself. What does that actually mean for me? That means that my thoughts, my words, my actions are all in alignment. What I'm saying, what I'm thinking, what I'm speaking, what I'm doing is all in alignment with myself. So I feel like, do I wish that I was never given this diagnosis? Absolutely. Like, I don't want to have to take a medication every day. Like, no, I don't want to. But now that these are the cards that I've been dealt, and I've seen how I am off medication versus on medication, the conversation that I have with God these days is really like, what do I need to do to be in alignment? What do I need to do to be at one with myself so I'm not experiencing this bipolarity and this duality? It's not just about mania and depression for me. It's like being in alignment with who I am as a person, doing and saying exactly what I mean.
Do you have a sense, I'm just like in the moment with you so deep. Do you have a sense that literally, your book, Say It Out Loud, this power to hear the soul's voice, to be able to have the courage to speak it out into existence, that in the process of you growing and growing and growing, being on stages, being on podcasts, doing you basically, that there's healing in that in itself?
There is so much healing in being seen. Okay, because for me, putting myself out there, even doing this interview with you is just another way for me to be seen and to impact people. So I find that it's the most beautiful work that I can do when I actually put myself out there, because I'm allowing other people to hear my story, and hopefully in that process, people feel less alone.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think it's really beautiful that you're just not pretending.
I can't pretend. It's hard for me to lie.
You could sit here and say, no, I'm good with bipolar. It's fine.
I'm not okay with it.
Bullshit, right?
I'm not okay with it.
But I think it's really beautiful to contrast that, because you literally have clients that are attracted to you because they're struggling with their voice and speaking. And maybe it's also a compartmentalization of branding and getting clear on who they are and their values and their
strategy,
purpose.
all that.
There's a lot in there. But at the core of it all, there's some piece of self that's feeling either unseen, unloved, or not enough, or not worthy. It's like,
or too much,
or too much. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely been labeled too much in my life.
Yeah.
But that's cool. I think that the question I'm really getting at is, if we are to be the most authentic self, which is like the greatest gift to the world. Joseph Campbell's quoted in that. He's like, the greatest gift that you will ever find in your life is to be you.
Yes.
And it like makes my body feel peace when I even say that. But getting there is not so easy as flicking a light switch. How do you propose that you yourself and your clients are on this path of getting there? And if getting there doesn't even exist, because once you're there, there'll be another there, what's the beginning process of that?
I always say, see yourself first. Like, actually pay attention to you as a person. I'm very self-obsessed. And when I say that, I mean, like, I am obsessed with the way that I think, what I believe, what I want, what I desire, my pain, my sorrows. Like, I'm obsessed with learning about myself, because that's all I have control over, right? I can sit there and try to change the men that I date, dating project men. I've done that before. But in the more recent past, and especially since getting back on medication, I've been like obsessed with just feeling really good in my skin and feeling really good in my body. So the first step is to see yourself. You have to, you have to know yourself. I mean, I don't know how else to say it.
It always comes back to that.
It always comes back to it. I mean, it's like you have to know yourself. Take some time and be with yourself. I'm single and I'm child free. I have a golden retriever, and I live alone. Yeah, she's great. She's 14. So I spend a lot of time with myself. But even if you're not single and if you're partnered, you still have to learn how to be with yourself, because even if you're in a relationship, you're still always going to be with yourself.
Yeah.
So you got to see yourself first.
If you love that video, you'll love the one on the screen right now. Click the one on the screen and enjoy.